Welcome everyone to the Starting Points education session on YouTube. By the way, if you didn't know this already, the Starting Point is located in Haddon Township, New Jersey. We have a YouTube channel and encourage you to visit our website, startingpoint.org. Really easy to remember, and you can find out all of the programming that we have available and also get a chance to review our practitioners' bios that are also on the website. So tonight, we're really lucky to have Pat Obst with us, who is a therapist who specializes in loss and grief. Pat has walked her own grief journey, and she'll share with us, I'm sure, some stories that will help us understand her and the topic. So tonight's topic is part of the series, Doing Grief Well, and this is our fourth podcast on YouTube on Doing Grief Well. Topic is loss due to divorce or breakup of a serious relationship, letting go and forming a relationship with yourself. Relationships are wonderful, but they can also be complicated. When you enter a relationship, you trust your partner, give your heart to them, and promise forever. But sometimes love and dedication are not enough to keep a relationship alive or to save it when difficult life events occur. The end of a relationship is a significant loss in your life. And that is where we're going to start talking with Pat Obst about grief and loss for a breakup. So let's start there, Pat. Do most people understand that they can grieve, and that just because their spouse or significant other is still living, that they are actually grieving a loss when they experience these breakups or divorce?
Surprisingly, no. Not everyone sees it. In fact, I have a client who was kind of surprised when I said to her, and this was a breakup with a fiance after she was already pregnant. She didn't recognize that she was grieving and that it was a loss. And part of the problem with that is that we might judge ourselves harshly if we don't see it as a loss, a death of a relationship. We might think that we shouldn't feel so, have to take days off from work, or, feel so upset. Also, sometimes with the breakup, we can focus too much on the anger and not allow ourselves to process the sorrow. So that's another reason why it's important that we recognize it as a loss. Also, sometimes we can get so wrapped up in making things okay for, like, the kids. If we have kids with this person, we can get wrapped up in the legal and financial details, the divorce process, the finances of, who's going to pay for what and child support and all that, that they don't recognize that it's a loss that they need to spend time grieving. There's this ripple effect. I mean, you can possibly lose your home through the process, and I have people who, they're losing their dog in the process.
Sure, right. That's an important family member.
Right. So they can get so caught up in taking care of all the details or taking care of the kids that they don't process that loss. So yes, absolutely, people can miss the fact that they're grieving.
And Pat, does it matter who chooses to end the relationship? It doesn't matter, right? It's still grief and loss.
Well, the person, yes, it is. But if someone has kind of been estranged for a while, like, let's say it's where somebody has an affair, they're going to maybe go through the loss of, like, seeing their children every day at the house, like that sort of thing. But as far as losing that other person, they lost them a long time ago when they stopped loving them, and
Sure.
So they're further along. a lot of times this one couple that I have with the fiance, he moved on long before, and she's still processing losing him. So yes, it can be different for each person.
How is it different? I mean, the person's still on this earth, I guess. So does somebody grieve it as an ambiguous loss, or how do you?
Yes, it's ambiguous in that. So ambiguous is either like a POW. You don't know if they're here or not, but yet it feels like they're gone. And then the opposite of that is, yes, somebody's here, but they're not here, like somebody with Alzheimer's or the divorced spouse. Yeah, they're here, but they're not my spouse anymore. So it's ambiguous in that it's not cut off. They're dead. They're gone. So you have to hold. Again, when you're grieving, you have to allow yourself to feel it by acknowledging that it's a loss. But you also sometimes have to hold two realities in one space where, yes, I'm losing this person, but I've got to also, again, especially if you have kids involved, I've also got to hold on to this person. This person is still going to be a part of my life. And your brain has to adjust to them being in a new role, so that instead of them being friend, partner, lover, spouse, their role now is just mom or dad to the kids. And so, part of that grieving is having to grieve the role that other person played. This person who she and her fiance broke up. She'd been pregnant already, and so she's had the baby, but in her mind, she has to keep coming back around to, he's the father of my child, and putting him in that role in her brain,
Right.
to help her begin. She can grieve him as her fiance, but then she needs to start to split from that and function and relate to him as father, not fiance. And that's part of the grieving that has to go on, is that role.
Well, how do you heal that kind of loss, particularly when you have kids? And they could be adult children too that are tough, right?
Oh, sure.
Just not the little ones.
So part of the healing, now think about it. If we have to heal, when we heal physically, part of what we have to do is set a boundary, right? We, if we broke our leg, we have to put a cast around it and protect it from getting bumped into and whatnot. So sometimes when we're going through a divorce, especially if it's a messy one, I have a couple people in really nasty, messy, long, drawn out divorces. You have to begin to, in order to heal, create some of those boundaries. So, some of the boundaries have to do with, not living in the same space. You'd be surprised at how many people try to divorce while they're still in the same space, and how difficult that is.
And COVID didn't help matters on that at all, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And so part of the setting of boundaries too, though, is if you're going to begin to heal, like you said in the beginning, this podcast in part is about letting go and forming a relationship with yourself. So so you set the boundaries, and then you begin to create a relationship with yourself, because you've been in a relationship with this other person for so long, right? Sometimes we can lose ourselves in that. So part of the healing is to set enough boundary so that now we can look at ourselves and ground ourselves in who we are, have a relationship with ourselves. So I have one of the women going through this long drawn out nasty divorce. She's begun to, well, she reached out for therapy. She's reading books on codependency. She's been involved in one or two of the groups there at Starting Point. So she's trying to understand the codependency and where that comes from, or trying to understand herself. Why was I codependent, right? So part of the healing, you set the boundaries, and then you begin to look at yourself and what you need. She joined a pottery class. I have women, getting back to exercise that they hadn't been in for, for a while. So when we start to ground ourselves, and we kind of have to rediscover ourselves almost, because we've been in that other role for so long, that getting part of the healing is, who am I? And I actually give people a relationship template.
Really?
Yes. And part of that, the first question is, because these are, sometimes people who are trying to figure out whether or not I should break up with this person, or if people are, maybe they're divorced and they're looking to date again. The first question of that template is, who do I want and need to be in a relationship? So they have to look at themselves and say, who do I not want to lose? Who do I want to keep intact? And also, who do I want to be able to be as that other person's significant other? I had somebody who was dating someone who, at first, this is a younger couple. A lot of younger couples get together over video games, believe it or not.
Wow, a whole new world.
They were and that was great at first, but then he became more of like, couch potato, let's stay in, let's play video games. And when she did that section as to, who am I and who do I want to be able to be, spontaneous, adventurous. Well, you can't be spontaneous and adventurous sitting in the couch with a controller in your hands. And so it helped her to realize what it was she needed to be, who she needed to be within herself and within a relationship, to then be able to make a decision about that relationship. And at the very least, begin to communicate with him to say, look, this is what I need.
I'm finding this conversation fascinating, because I'm just thinking how many people stop when they're in a relationship and take the time to do this just for themselves. We forget about that piece over years.
Right. So, when you go through part of the healing process, when you're either going through or have gone through a breakup or a divorce, is, a lot of people will jump right back into another relationship. Bad idea. You need to figure out who you are, what you need, what your part was in the ending of that relationship. Because sometimes estrangement starts way before the relationship ends, and we don't even realize it. We're working so much, or we're busy taking care of a sick parent or whatever. Not that it's our fault, but we have to understand our piece of it so that we can manage it different in future relationships when those kinds of outside forces start to pull on the relationship. So that if we understand ourselves better, then we're going to make better choices moving forward, and we're going to be better in any next relationship if there is one. Now, if there isn't one, then you say, well, then why do I have to get to know myself? Well, even if you choose not to be with someone again, or maybe you're older and you're like, you know what, I've done enough of somebody else's laundry. I'm done. We still need people in our lives. We're social creatures. So, who am I? What do I need? What do I want to discover? I always say, look with curiosity and wonder and stay open to the possibilities of the growth.
When we were talking about this earlier, you used the term forgiveness. We have to remember that forgiveness plays a role in healing. So can you talk about that a little bit?
So when we're filled with, anger and resentment, that, usually is certainly there in the very beginning, but also can come up again. So I'll give you an example. When I got divorced, certainly there was anger, resentment, and whatnot. My husband came out as gay, and that ended the marriage. Then later on, when I tried to have children, I lost Ricky. And my anger and resentment for my ex-husband came back up.
Wow.
Because the thinking was I was older when and of course more complications and things, right? Where had I been with him and had babies younger, might have been okay, right? I wouldn't have had to go through the loss of a child.
That's where you go, right?
That's where you go. No, there's no guarantee. I could have had miscarriages and things with him. There's no guarantee, right? But I just want to say that sometimes that stuff comes back around, even if we've done work on it. It's just another layer that we need to work through, right? And I did. I worked through that in part with what I just said. Well, look, there was no guarantee, right? And beautiful, wonderful things have come from Ricky's spirit, even though he was with me for 27 and a half weeks in my womb and in my life for 32 and a half hours after he was born. So with anger and resentment, it becomes like an emotional termite, just eating away. We don't even realize it, right? Can eat away at our health, can eat away at our emotions, our relationships. Anger and resentment keeps us in the past so that we can't experience the happiness of the present. We used to, in one group that I led, we had people stick their finger up under their ribs while we were talking about this, forgiveness. We said, well, it's like a knife, right? The person has stabbed us. They're going about their life. We've kept the knife in there and we keep turning it.
Oh,
so the whole time we're talking and people have their finger up under their rib. When
that's great.
After a while, we finally say, okay, take your finger out of the rib. They're like, that was really uncomfortable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we need to take it out, sew it up, right? Also, anger, resentment, it's a negative energy. It's not a positive energy. It holds us back. And it leaves the responsibility for our happiness in the hands of the person who hurt us. If we're still like, you lousy, no good piece of whatever, they should have done this, they should have done that. We're looking to that other person to fix it. Well, they're the ones who broke it apart in the first place. Why would we, if I handed you my baby and you dropped my baby, I would never hand my baby to you again.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not putting my baby in your hands.
Makes perfect sense.
Let's not put our lives and our future in the hands of the person who, messed it up in the first place. So, that anger and resentment is no good to hang on to. So forgiveness instead, that's that giving up the hope that the past could be different. That's that acceptance. What has happened has happened. Doesn't mean it's okay. It's just that we see it as reality to move from. Because if we're still woulda, coulda, shoulda, then we're not dealing with reality, because reality is we can't change the past. So forgiveness helps us to get that heaviness off of us. It enables us to take back our power, right? So that our power is not in someone else's hands. It's a positive energy that propels us forward. And it like I said, it puts that responsibility so that now we own ourselves, we own our present, and we own our future instead of them. And now we can nurture it. You know, forgiveness is a gift that we give ourselves.
That's a statement that most people have trouble hearing when they're angry and hurt, correct? So
Well,
say
look,
it
we have
again.
to go through that process. We have to, it's okay. It's certainly okay for us to go through a time where we're bitter and we're angry and we're hurt. That's a victim mode. But we can't stay there. We need to move up to what we call level 3, which is the responsible person. Level 3 is now anabolic energy. It flows, it has movement, it has growth. We're able to, in this stage, we take responsibility for our actions, our thoughts, our feelings. And we say, this happened. Now I'm going to let go of all that. Again, it's not condoning it. It's not saying it's okay. It's saying, I'm not going to hang on to the bitterness that actually is hurting me, like that knife under our ribs, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not going to wish bad things to happen to that other person, because that keeps the focus on the other person. It's not where we want our focus. We want it on our lives and moving forward.
So it really is about letting go after going through the appropriate.
Forgiveness is letting go of the impact, the negative impact of it. There's a lot of positive impact after we unpack it, right? Positive growth. I have people who've gone through a divorce who said, you know what? I kept picking the same person over and over and over again. Right? Well, when they finally do
all the time.
when they finally do the work after their divorce to have a relationship with themselves, and I think I'm going a little bit into the next question, the recreating our life after this is, you'd be surprised how many people we go back and we do the inner child work, and they heal things that they never would have had a chance to heal had they not been so broken.
So there's almost a benefit to having experienced this grief.
I don't know that I would call it a benefit. It's what we call PTG, post-traumatic growth.
Okay.
Where you take a really crappy situation and you grow not only from that situation, but you can actually heal a lot of other stuff, that other wounds that were left unhealed. They're just festering. And so then you're probably going to make better choices, because you're not this wounded person trying to, well, let's say you grew up with an alcoholic parent. Well, you keep picking alcoholics or workaholics, or right, because it's familiar.
Right.
So once you understand that and you do the work, now you can make a choice, a better choice, and not just go with your, what I call the primitive brain, where all those wounds happened, and not just live in reaction to that. You can make conscious choice, and conscious choice is a big part of having a relationship with yourself. It's scary, but it's necessary. So taking the time for self-reflection, seeing what your responsibility was in the demise of that relationship, because everybody has a part in it, even if you've been cheated on, because somewhere things started to become estranged. Okay. Just a very quick example, because I know we have to end. I had a client who things got very rocky in her marriage. She had 2 very young children, and she was so overwhelmed that she became very, just resentful how much her husband had to work, and she was tired, and she was nagging, and all that kind of stuff. So, and you can see why. I mean, anybody
Absolutely.
who has children, right? But that drove a wedge. Right now, he started to stray. Fortunately, not totally off the cliff, but And then, they came back around, been working with me, and she's able to see her part instead of saying, well, he should have this and he shouldn't have done that. She
Which is
understood.
probably where it started, right?
She was also driving him away. That doesn't
Right.
mean, look, as I say, every couple, the health of their relationship is equal. Both of them are 100% responsible for the health or ill health of that relationship. Once somebody steps out of the marriage, that person is 100% responsible for that betrayal. Okay. In other words, the spouse is not responsible for the person betraying,
Okay.
for them stepping out, but they did have a part in the estrangement. You see what I'm saying?
And you can't see that if you're only angry and you
Right.
haven't forgiven.
Right, exactly. So part of what the recreating your life is, that relationship with yourself where you do the self-reflection, you take responsibility for your part. Maybe you have to do some inner child work to get rid of that familiar dysfunction, right? And then I work with that relationship template so people can say, this is really what I need in a relationship, and this is who I want to be. And then they can redefine and move
Have
forward.
you used two terms that I'm not sure everybody is really up on, and that would be inner child and codependency, because codependency sounds like it's one thing, but defined differently. So can
Right.
you just
Okay,
quickly
sure.
define those?
So codependency, and I'm sorry, what was the other?
Inner child work.
Okay. So with codependency, I I certainly have people read books or go to the groups, but the in a nutshell, here are my needs, here are your needs. I take my needs off the table.
I like that definition. I understand it now.
What does that do? That breeds resentment. Okay. And so and some people say, well, I am communicating my needs. But my other question is, are you also listening to your spouse's needs?
That's great.
Okay.
That's a great definition.
Right. So of course there's more to codependency
Absolutely, but
than that. That's Melanie Beatty's the department, in her Beyond Codependency and Codependent No More. But for inner child work, our brain matures from the back to the front. Primitive brain, middle brain, and then the executive functioning. That's our rational brain. We don't really get to that until we're about 26 years old. Okay. But we don't get rid of our primitive brain. Our primitive brain is where all that, that growing up time, some people say that's formed in the first 5 years. There's all different theories about it. But as far as I'm concerned, just your childhood until you're 26, that's your primitive brain. That wounds happen, or you get messages. You get messages about, am I lovable? Can I trust others? Do I have a voice? Is anger okay? We get all kinds of messages, and we get wounded. Now, our parents don't set out to wound us. Generally.
Well, they didn't get the instruction manual.
Right. But they have their baggage, and they bring it to their parenthood. And then we get harmed by their baggage, right?
And they're harmed for feeling guilty about all the bad things they did to us.
I mean, we could go back to Adam and Eve, right?
Right.
So that's why it's important for us to take responsibility and say, I can't blame my parents. I'm an adult now. I'm the one who has to heal those wounds. Okay. I'm the one who has to go back and see, and I actually have people do letter writing where they acknowledge the wounds, and then they write what's called a statement of intent, which is, I will no longer ... From now on, I will ... And then an action. I had a guy whose, father was real nasty, right? You're a loser. You won't amount to anything, all that. His letter in that part was, I will no longer see myself through your eyes, Dad. From now on, I'll see myself through my wife and my coworkers who believe in me. Therefore, and then the action was, I'm going to start classes at the community college, and I'm going to go for the promotion at work. So see how that was all in the opposite direction of the wounds.
Absolutely.
Okay. New operating system. Our primitive brain is the old operating system, and we're trying to do adulthood with an old operating system.
I think that's a great analogy.
So when you spend time with yourself, when you've come through a divorce or a breakup, you're able to create that new operating system. You need to grieve it. You need to heal and set some boundaries, get grounded in yourself, but maybe heal some of those wounds too, those old wounds, so that you can have kind of a new trajectory and you're not making the same choice over and over again, the same harmful dysfunctional choice. You're making a healthier choice.
Well, Pat, I can't thank you enough. This was wonderful. And thank you for the definitions. I think
I forget that people don't know.
some of us aren't there yet. Well, Pat, I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the next podcast on your series, Doing Grief Well, which will be on unrecognized as losses we experience through our lives. So I'm really looking forward to that as well, because unrecognizable losses are really, we don't know what they are yet, right?
Well, just a quick plug on that. The unrecognizable aren't, if you take, injury or illness, loss of a loved one, and divorce or breakup, it's everything that's not that, but feels like a loss. And I'll explain that in the podcast. But these things that, you don't get bereavement days off for, right?
That's the tough part, right?
We're still losing something. So, and that'll be in the next podcast.
Well, thank you very much. As you know, this is you're listening to it on our YouTube channel. So please take a chance and look through the other sessions and podcasts that are on. And thank you for joining Pat and me at the Starting Point Education channel. Have a good night.